I'm Andrew Sherman. I'm a Texas transplant who has always been in pursuit of art as a career. I've played in bands, pursued an acting career in Hollywood, but I found it behind the lens of a camera here in Dallas, Texas. I was born in New York, I've lived in Chicago, Los Angeles, Austin, but I love Dallas. There's a magical artistic scene in Dallas that mostly goes unnoticed to the outside world. This podcast is focused on what makes it so special and the people who make it thrive artistically. If you don't live here, and even if you do, you might not have heard of them. This is the Dallas Famous Podcast.
So who you gonna be? Who you gonna be when you're all grown up? Who you gonna be? Who you gonna be when you're over us? Yeah, who you gonna be?
Deep Ellum has been called the soul of Dallas, and there's a lot of reasons why. Today's guest is Breonny Lee. She's a photographer and she's the president of the Deep Ellum Association. Breonny takes us on a deep dive into all things happening for the Deep Ellum 150th celebration. We get to know Breonny as well as how she came to be involved in such an important role. We talk about the Deep Ellum Community Center, the addition of Deep Ellum Radio to the fold, as well as the inaugural Deep Ellum Community Arts Fair coming up May 27th through 29th. If you love Deep Ellum, you're going to love this, so sit back and enjoy my chat with Breonny Lee. And we are here today at the Deep Ellum Community Center with Breonny. Breonny Lee, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to start that. It's like the worst part of the podcast is like people I even know, and I'm like, oh shoot, I've never said my friend's last name out loud. So.
Yeah, the last name is easy. The first name is where people usually get tripped up, and you said it right.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
I have people I've known for 10 or 15 years that are still calling me Breonny or Breonny or Breonny or...
I wonder if people that hear it first have a better time with it than read it, because when I read it, it took me a minute to figure it out.
I don't know. I know people who've been... I have, friends who were correcting them not subtly in conversation, and they still...
Yeah. Well, it doesn't seem that odd, but I guess it is a little bit unusual.
It's unusual.
Is there like a reason for that name? Or?
My mom's nuts. So she took some name that she heard on a talk show and some book. Touch Not the Cat is the title of the book. And she took this, she saw the name in the book and she thought, oh, that must be that name I heard on that talk show. And she made up a spelling. But I don't think that the name in the book nor the name on the talk show are what she came out with.
Like the character's like a whole other person's name in this book.
I think it's probably pronounced differently.
I see.
And so she really made up a pronunciation
It
inadvertently.
Sounds natural though. I don't know. I guess
it works. And
Yeah.
now there are a few other Breonnys.
Yeah.
For a long time, I was the only one that I could find.
And when you go to Disney World, you can't get your license plate.
Right. There's no license plate, no custom Breonny keychain.
Oh.
But it worked out in that, my email address is breonny@gmail.com. My website is breonny.com.
Right. Very easy to find.
Yeah. As long as you can spell my name.
Right. Exactly. I have the opposite problem. I used to get people wishing me happy birthday like all year long, and they're like, wait a minute, aren't you the Andrew Sherman that went to Ohio State or that was in Florida? And it's like, it's a stupid common name. So anyway, now that we've established who you are and where we are, we're at the Deep Ellum Community Center in Deep Ellum, which is it's not even open yet. It's not even new because it's still in process.
It's in soft launch phase. So we are open on the weekends. We're open 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Fridays and 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. And we do have some workshops going in the space. We're about to launch walking tours out of the space. And we've had a few holiday parties and that kind of stuff. We've got Foundation 45 is in the space, and they are doing group sessions, free group sessions, 2 p.m. every Sunday.
Group sessions therapy?
For therapy, yes, therapy group sessions. And then they're about to launch Remix Recovery, which is an alternative to AA or NA.
Okay.
Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. here in person. In a couple of weeks, I don't have the exact date, but yeah, so we are doing stuff in the space. The space is soft open. The grand opening is scheduled for September 23rd.
Okay.
We're building out a cohesive history exhibit. We are building out a Deep Ellum music listening room where you can come and sit and listen to music from the very first recording to present day music. And the room that you and I are sitting in right now is being transformed into an authentic 1930s recording studio. We have an authentic 1930s recording lathe and an authentic 1930s room mic that have been refurbished and are working beautifully. And
So you mean like an actual? It's not an exhibit. It's an actual.
it will be an actual recording studio. So it
Oh,
will
wow.
be primarily educational.
Okay.
These are the technology predates vinyl. These are black lacquer or shellac records that spin at 78 RPM, and they are cut with a lathe. They are not pressed like vinyl.
Okay. Wow.
So when it is fully launched, come September 23rd, this will be the only authentic 1930s 78 RPM recording studio open to the public in the entire world.
Wow. And then you have a place to play them here too once you do the recordings?
So the way that it's going to work, they're masters. They are not. It's not like a vinyl that you can keep playing over and over. They degrade very quickly. The black lacquer is very brittle. So the idea is that they'll be recorded here on site with a technician, and they'll be simultaneously while they're being recorded on this antique equipment. They will be a digital recording will be rendered. Then they'll be played back, and there will be a digital recording of what it sounds like being played back, and then it will be framed.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay, I see. And then we should probably say, for those that don't know, this is kind of part of the 100-year anniversary?
The 150th.
150th. Yes.
So the official, unofficial founding of Deep Ellum is 1873, and that number is kind of like throwing darts at a wall, to be honest.
Right.
You can find references to the founding of Deep Ellum in 1870 and 1876. So some folks, about 15, 20 years ago, just split the difference down the middle. Let's call it 1873.
Right.
And here we are today with a bunch of celebrations surrounding the 150th. The sesquicentennial is...
Okay.
I'm
glad-
not even sure I'm saying that right. I
I'm glad
practiced
you
so hard.
said it because I was not going to try. Was Deep Ellum like almost immediately a music area, or did that take a little while before that started to develop?
It took a little while. So 1873, if you will, the founding of Deep Ellum was based around the train tracks, which are just a block. They were just a block from where we are here, the intersection at Elm and Central Expressway. So where the highway is now is where the train used to run. Mm-hmm. And without the train tracks right here, not only would Deep Ellum not be on the map, Dallas wouldn't be on the map.
Oh, wow.
So this neighborhood was built around the intersection of the train tracks. Without the commerce and the hustle and bustle that the trains brought through, the actual first Union Station in Dallas was right here in Deep Ellum, right at this. That was Union Station.
Huh.
And so that's really what founded the neighborhood. And in that, attracting workers and cotton. Cotton is a huge part of the Dallas story. Mm-hmm. At one point, my understanding is that as much as 1/6 of the world's cotton was picked in North Texas.
Oh, okay.
So
wow. I don't think I knew
in
that.
surrounding Dallas, and the Continental Gin, which is in Deep Ellum and is now the Continental Gin is now the co-working space, common desk with Fiction Coffee downstairs. Mm-hmm. That was the cotton processing plant, or the one of the most prominent cotton processing plants in Dallas. So right here in Deep Ellum. So really it's this combination of the train tracks and the cotton industry that put Dallas on the map, which is something that I know is really uncomfortable to talk about, that people don't want to talk about now in 2023. But this is my understanding of why we're here today is train tracks and cotton.
Wow. I don't think I've ever heard anyone put it that way, but that's pretty specific way to start the whole thing.
It is. So the workers who worked the cotton fields would be here in Deep Ellum in these, there were little shotgun houses at one point. So it was really more residential. It's always been kind of a mixed use, residential, commercial some of the old maps of Deep Ellum are really fascinating to see where the horse stalls were and the cotton was, and then the pearlstone grain silo at the very edge of town. I've got actually here in the community center right now, I can show you some ledgers I have from the pearlstone from 110 years ago. I've got a range of, they actually survived a fire. You can see the fire damage, these ledgers, but they show massive amounts of money moving through pearlstone. Some of these ledgers are, $500,000, and this is 110 years ago.
Wow. That was a cotton processing plant also?
It was grain.
Grain, okay. I know it's still there. I think there's some controversy where the city kind of wants to get rid of it and the owners just don't want to get rid of it. Have you heard about this?
I have heard a lot of controversy about a lot of things, and I have not heard about the city wanting to tear down pearlstone. This is news to me.
Okay. A future episode, perhaps.
I have. I know the owner of that, so if that's a conversation you want to have, I bet I can get her here in a studio with you.
Okay. All right. We'll put that on the docket. I had a friend that wants to do a documentary, so maybe I'll bring him along.
Yeah. So the previous president of the Deep Ellum Community Association, Jim Rogers, went through a whole process to purchase pearlstone from the previous owner. So I have some insight. I actually have spent not just a night or two in pearlstone, but a few weeks stacked up together all the times I stayed there.
Huh. I would love to go check that place out.
Yeah. So that's the thing that can happen.
We skipped past. I mean, I realize that this is sort of a lot of what we're going to talk about today, but let's get to know you a little bit. Because who the heck are you? You're just sitting here. You just suddenly. I mean, I know. Well, I'll share that you're a photographer, but how did you? You're from Dallas originally?
Yes, I was born in Dallas in 1983, and grew up mostly in DFW. So I think, if my timeline is correct, my father served on the Dallas PD.
Okay.
So he was on Dallas PD for about 5 years, and then left the PD and joined the Navy right before I was born. So I was born in Dallas at St. Paul, backwards. Came into the world breach. I've been doing backwards ever since.
It's the theme.
Yeah. So then I moved around the country with my father in the Navy and landed back in DFW by the time I was 5, and grew up really in the mid cities. Actually, I'm multi-generational. My mother was born in Dallas. My father was not. He was born elsewhere. But I also think that my grandmother was born in Dallas. So we've been in certainly owned property in Dallas.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's I know that there are a lot of transplants to Dallas now, and I've left a little bit and come back, but mostly I've lived in Dallas County for most of my life.
I feel like it says a lot about Dallas because I know a lot of people that have either never left or have left and come back, and I've lived in a lot of places, and it seems more prevalent here for some reason.
There's something special about Dallas, that she's not the prettiest girl in the room, but she's the only one I want to dance with,
Well put. I love it here. I do. So you're back in Dallas. I mean, then you grew up in mid-cities.
Yeah, I grew up in mid-cities, and I discovered Deep Ellum when I was 14. And it felt like home, not the place where you live, but the place where you belong. Mm-hmm. So I've been coming down to Deep Ellum, stomping around these grounds when the only places I could get into were the door for the underground Christian music scene of the 90s and Sons of Hermit Hall on Wednesday nights for swing dance lessons. I've been going to swing dance lessons since it's $2 a pop to get into swing dance lessons. And then the other place I got into was Insomnia, which was a coffee shop with reverse hours. They opened at 6 p.m. and we're open until 3 a.m. kind of deal. And it's in the space that Twilight's in now.
Okay.
And they had open mic poetry nights there, and it was an important part of the community.
It's always a shame when places like that go. I mean, there's so many places that I've heard about that I need to dig into the history that are just gone, And it happens every day here. It seems like there's like turnover. you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Well, that's the story. We try to make this a Deep Ellum story about the turnover of businesses, but it is just the story of business.
It's true. I mean, maybe just because there's like such a throng of business here in general that you notice it more maybe that it's happening. But I mean, that's actually why I wanted to move here personally. Was it just this neighborhood, and like I lived in Los Angeles, and like all the music was just spread out, and I just felt like you could spend lots of nights here, especially by the time I got here like 8 years ago. There's like a lot of clubs open. And
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
It's been a really interesting transition for Deep Ellum. Honestly, always. My window into the transitions of Deep Ellum is only the past about 30 years, not
Only.
even 25 years, right?
That's a while. though.
But the story of the transition of Deep Ellum starts in 1873.
Right. And everybody that I talk to says the same thing. Like, oh, it's so different than it was.
Even 5 years ago, it's so different than it
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
And 5 years ago was so different than it was 10 years ago. It's really remarkable. I did this huge event. It was Urban Legends in 2013 on Main Street. And it was in the space that is now the empty Brain Dead, the Patagonia across the street, the space that's now Vadora, and the space that's like right next to Brain Dead, those couple of little businesses right there. So we took over 5 empty buildings. The entire block was empty except for, I don't know, a business or two.
Right.
It was all empty buildings. We had this huge event where we had, 1,500 people out bouncing around between these 5 establishments. And it was a huge success in that we saw Main Street alive with pedestrian activity for the first time in, about 15 years. And now you wouldn't even, it's just wild to think that was just 10 years ago.
Right.
And the block was totally empty.
Yeah, now it's just stacked with businesses and people. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool to see, but
Yeah, I think Taboo and Tigger's were like the only thing on that block that were open. It was just...
That's wild. And at some point, did you end up moving down here?
I have never actually lived in Deep Ellum. The closest I've lived is about 10 miles out.
But you definitely feel this connection, though, because, well, first of all, the reason I think you're Dallas famous is because I knew who you were way before I met you, just because of your postings in the Deep Ellum community page, and it's sort of like you took ownership of that. And, it's a lot of people like just own this place and because it means something to them, and I just think it's cool. But I'm just curious how that ended up happening for you.
It was really that, coming down here. I think my very first memory of Deep Ellum is I was 13, and my older sister and her boyfriend at the time brought me down to Deep Ellum for an open studio. And it was my first time being in artists' studios and seeing how they create their work. And it was really magical for me. Then fast forward, I don't even know if the next thing that I was at was a Christian concert at the Door, or whether it was swing dancing at Sons of Herman. But it was really that time, that year, 1997, when I was 14, that I was down here at least once or twice a month for swing dance or for a show or for I came down here and I used to read my poetry at open mics at Insomnia, and that feeling of having a place to belong, of finding your people, is what it is. And that's why I'm still a part of Deep Ellum, is the legacy of the people who have come before me, some that I know that I are no longer with us, that I miss, and feel that connection to, but then some that were here way, way, way before I am, and have just left an indelible mark on this neighborhood, that have made it the creative cultural hub that it is. And as much as I even tried to get out, it sucks you back in.
Yeah. So then how did you go from just, I love this place, to getting this involved in this community center? And
So it went like this. About, let me see, 2009, 2010, I actually moved away for a little while. I lived in Houston and Austin, and I came back to Dallas at the end of 2009. And that's when I got kind of re-involved. Deep Ellum had gone through a strange transition, and there was a lot of cool art stuff happening in Dallas at the time. So I did a lot of projects with Art Love Magic and with Art Conspiracy, and somewhere in this transition, I had a boyfriend who lived in Adam Hats, started coming down here for shows again. The Curtain Club will always have a special place in my heart. And it just sort of happened organically. I started volunteering for a few projects for the Deep Ellum Community Association. Probably the first one was the 2011 Deep Ellum Arts Festival, working with the Community Association on the Deep Ellum Artist Village in the Arts Festival. And then once you start volunteering for stuff, it snowballs. They call you again, you do something else. But at the time, still, I was volunteering primarily for arts projects, arts shows, and my involvement with the Community Association really solidified in 2014. The boyfriend I had living in Adam Hats died by suicide, and the Deep Ellum Community Association, the Deep Ellum family in general, and the Community Association in particular, wrapped their arms around me and carried me through a really dark time in my life.
Yeah. Wow. When you were kind of going back to Houston and Austin and back, like, what was your photography doing at that point?
So I began my photography career at 19 officially, photographing weddings, and I was still in DFW at that time. I was in Fort Worth, and when I moved down to Houston was right at the same time of the crash of the real estate bubble burst. And I don't know if you remember that far back, the wedding industry was just totally fell apart. People literally stopped getting married. They were pushing their wedding off 18 months, 2 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so my wedding bookings pretty much dried up overnight. I had very few weddings on the books. I was at that place where you have to pivot, or so I did some soul searching, and it was good. That's how I got really involved in all the art stuff, is I realized that photographing weddings was a lot of work, was a lot of stress. I really had a good time with it for the most part, but it was also a metric fuck ton of work.
Yeah.
And stress.
Stress factor.
And I had little kids at the time. My oldest was 7, and I had a one like 11 months old, when all of this kind of moved to Houston. The wedding industry collapsed all at the same time. And so I was fortunate to be in a position where I could take a little time. I mean, I was still doing some work. I was still making some money, but to rethink what I wanted to do. And that's where I ended up believing I wanted to move to Austin. So I did that for just a year. And the main reason I moved back to Dallas was the community. My family was here and my friends. Austin's great, but I was starting over with no community. So I came back to Dallas for community, for family, for friends, for Deep Ellum. And so in that time period, to answer the question, I pivoted from weddings to doing more like corporate headshots and I guess what they call personal branding now,
Right.
where doing work for bands and for creative entrepreneurs, writers and a few comedians. I found out they have very shallow pockets.
Yeah. They're also usually not that happy of people, I've noticed. Other story altogether.
That's a whole other story.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's what I did, started doing. And then I also really poured a lot of my energy into creating artwork, photography derived artwork, and curating art shows and producing arts events. And so my photography transitioned to not only a totally different field that I had been previously working in, although a lot of overlap. I was still shooting people. I'm a portrait photographer primarily. And I was able to start shooting a lot more live music in that time, which is my favorite thing to photograph, of course, right?
Yeah.
And at some point over the course of the past, 7 or 8 years, the event production and art curation and really took over, so that while I still do some photography, it's actually really kind of an interesting how this happened. Looking back on this, I've had this realization that somewhere when I took on a position with the Arts Festival booking music, which I'd never done before, they called me and invited me to come start booking stages for the Deep Ellum Arts Festival. As someone who photographed a lot of Deep Ellum bands and was really involved in the Deep Ellum music scene, I thought, well, I've been doing all these art shows. I've been wrangling hundreds of artists. Musicians can't be that much worse than artists, right? So so I got it. And it's true. Musicians are actually a dream to work with compared with visual artists, because the one thing they're used to doing is showing up on time.
Oh, right. They have to be, Yep. Visual artists are usually just in their little studio by themselves.
They bring me their art pieces wet, still dripping oil paint to hang on the wall, 15 minutes after the show has started kind of situation.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So having musicians that, show up on time when they're supposed to be there, it's like, this is a dream.
Okay.
But I took on that position thinking that it would I'd be able to leverage it to do more work photographing music, which is what I wanted to do the most. And it really, I found myself with an unexpected identity shift where people I'd known for years stopped identifying me as a photographer and started identifying me as a music booker.
Oh, weird.
It was really weird. Even people I knew really well for years.
Huh.
It just shifted.
That's interesting. That's funny because people have tried to get me to book bands, and I haven't done it, but I didn't think of that even being a problem. I just was like, well, I don't want to know how much they make, so I don't want to book them, I don't want to get into their money situation at all. That's kind of where I was at with it anyway. But that's interesting. And so, you weren't like booking bands anywhere else though.
No, it was just this one event. It was a huge event.
It was a big event.
It's a huge event.
I think actually I did meet you a few times at that event when I first started shooting bands. It was, Electric Ants and some other ones at the festival.
Yeah.
But, okay. Interesting.
So it was really interesting. I thought that I'd be able to leverage it into more photography work, and it actually ended up shifting my identity so much that I basically only take on I hardly ever take on new clients now. My photography clients are clients that I've had for 10 or 15 years. Every once in a while I take on a new client, and just I don't know, I had moments where I pushed back on that and even quit the arts festival at one point. And then I was like, you know what? I just don't even know that I'm fulfilled. I'm fulfilled with event production and with art curation. And I have more time to think about my own artwork as a photographer in some ways when I'm not doing as much commercial work, right? So it's a double-edged sword, and one that I still have not completely come to terms with. And photography is really complicated. When I first started my photography career, my first weddings, I shot on film. And I developed film in the darkroom. And
that is pressure to me. I can't imagine that. I've never done that.
Oh, I don't know. I can tell you that I've lost more images through volatile digital technology than I did through film.
Really?
I did, for sure. I had a really horrific wedding. The wedding was fine, but I had one singular micro SD card that was dropped.
Uh-huh.
And the technology was so volatile that the entire card, the entire contents were scrambled. If I didn't have a second shooter at that event, I would not have had any images of the ceremony.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
And that never happened with film. Maybe
Yeah.
partially because you're changing out so many rolls. You only got max of 36 shots on a 35 millimeter roll of film.
Right.
You're really careful about what you photograph because each click is precious. And two, if you do lose a whole roll, you're less likely to lose like an entire section of an event than you are now, where
Right.
I mean, I can fit an entire wedding on one card now. So if that one card goes bad, fortunately my camera has backup it'll record the 2 slots. But
Sure.
yeah, that's been,
It's scary.
it's really scary. It's really scary. It's not like shooting headshots or something where it's, if something goes terribly awry, you can schedule a reshoot.
Yeah.
The pressure of weddings is a once in a lifetime event, and if you miss the shot, you miss the shot.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's, again, I don't do a lot of them. I have 2 coming up now to say that, but I have photo insurance, and supposedly there's like, it goes up to like, I don't know what the amount is like, but I can recreate like the wedding scene if my card were to die. But I'm like, sure, I could do that, but like, is everybody kind of come together? It's still not the actual wedding. I mean, yeah, we can create magic, but it's still not the moment. So yeah, you want everything to be working. Basically.
Yeah, I did have that one wedding where I had to do some kind of a recreate something after the fact, and yeah, it's just not the same.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's probably like, first of all, we're sober, all the guests, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a lot of intense pressure shooting weddings, and
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's less pressure shooting shows, because even though there's like moments where I feel like, oh, I missed that moment, like nobody else knows I missed it. Like, you're still getting cool moments the whole way through, so.
yeah.
But, so it was a pretty, what's the word? Polarizing event, the Deep Ellum Arts Festival.
Yeah, I would say that.
But now it's gone. It's over. And
It
so
is.
what's coming up? There's something new happening now.
There is something new happening. So it's happening very soon. And I'm having these moments of panic of, is everything going right? Are we going to be able to pull this off? It's going to be what it's going to be. But the Deep Ellum Community Arts Fair, Memorial Day weekend, May 27th, 28th, and 29th. And it's going to be build on the legacy of the Arts Festival and the Art Walk before it. And it's going to be something else, a totally different, totally new thing. It is 100% volunteer right now. It is by the community, for the community.
Right. That was a big thing that people had a problem with, was the other one was an owner from an outside area and blah, blah, blah. So now that's not a deal right now. It's all local.
It's all local, and even calling it ownership is a little bit complicated. So it is a project of the Deep Ellum Community Association, in the same way that the Outdoor Market or the Urban Garden is a project of the Deep Ellum Community Association. And I like to push back on this narrative of the old festival owner being some out-of-state carpetbagger, because
Please do. That's just the story that's been going around.
That's the story that goes around, and I feel like it's inaccurate. So Stephen Millard, he was living in Southlake when he started the Deep Ellum Arts Festival. At the time, he founded the Main Street Arts Festival in Fort Worth. He had just left that over some creative disagreements, and the Deep Ellum Association at the time, which was a brand new organization and has since become the Deep Ellum Community Association, reached out to Stephen and asked him if he would come do a festival like Main Street Arts Festival in Deep Ellum. The difference is that Main Street Arts Festival and all of the other festivals that he did, he founded the Bedford Blues Festival and the Dallas Jazz Festival, which is now defunct, and many other festivals. He was running festivals all over the country. So, but he was DFW based. Mm-hmm. He was living here. He was raising his children here. His wife was from here. And so these Deep Ellum Association people begged him to come do it, but they didn't have any money to pay him to do it. So this was the only event out of the dozens of events that his company was managing that he was fronting out of pocket.
Ah, okay.
And at the time, Deep Ellum was in a transitional phase in the mid-90s. It was probably the Deep Ellum Arts Festival is partially responsible for some of the revitalization of Deep Ellum because it was such a big event for this struggling neighborhood at the time. And he was living here. He moved away about, 15 years into the event. Mm-hmm. So he did move to California, but he was never from California. He is not some carpetbagger from Santa Barbara. It's many years this event lost money, and he was the one who was either making a little bit of money off the event, losing a little bit of money on the event, jeopardizing his mortgage for this event.
He got so much. He's so villainized.
I know.
I didn't know his name. But I'm glad we're setting the record straight, I guess, because there was. It makes sense though. Like it started when there wasn't all these businesses and there was not all these people here doing other things, and it. Yeah, I could see how you could say that it helped grow the area.
It did. So at the time, when the first event, now of course I was young. The first event was in '94, which is, I was 11, so I didn't come to. I don't know the first one I came to, late 90s. And it was from Good Latimer to Malcolm X in that kind of footprint. And there were no businesses there, like that event I talked about in 2013. And there were no businesses. And as the event, it was really after that 2013 Urban Legends event we had where we had tons of businesses. And now there had been some back and forth because in the 90s, in the late 90s, there were businesses on Main Street, right? Mm-hmm. And then there was a big... I don't know what you would call it, a turnover in Deep Ellum where things went south. And there was a lot of empty buildings, shuttered windows and doors for years. And then somewhere around, I guess 2000, I can remember, 2015 is the last year that the Deep Ellum Arts Festival was from Good Latimer to Malcolm X, and then it moved down the street, and then the last few years was all the way down at the other end of the event, and that's because there were businesses who had storefronts that interfered with how many artist tents could go up without blocking storefronts. Mm-hmm. But when this event was founded, there weren't storefronts to block.
Right. Perspective is everything.
Yeah, perspective is everything. Yeah.
All right. Well, you heard it here. If you didn't know, you guys are all meanies for coming down on that guy. He was trying to do a good thing. He did a good thing, actually.
Yeah, he did a good thing. I really think he did a good thing. He's well-meaning. He can be a pain in the butt to work with sometimes. Maybe we should cut that out. Maybe not. I don't know. Yeah, I think he knows he is.
We all are. Come on.
Yeah. But no, I have a lot of respect for Steven and for what he did for the neighborhood.
So, okay, so that's all volunteer, the new Arts Festival.
The new Arts Festival,
well, in general, if somebody wants to volunteer for the festival or just in general, what do they have to do?
Just in general, the best way to volunteer for the community center or the urban garden or the outdoor market or the community arts fair. We do other projects too. We did COVID testing through the pandemic, and so those pop-up COVID testing stations around the neighborhood. That was the community association sponsoring that.
Very nice.
Anyway, so the best way to volunteer is to drop an email to DECA, DECA, at deepellumtexas.com.
Okay.
And I'll get you plugged in. Great.
So this program originally will air on Deep Ellum Radio, and so is that now part of the Deep Ellum?
Yes, Deep Ellum Radio is now officially a project of the Deep Ellum Community Association.
Okay, and so how does that work exactly?
So Deep Ellum Radio was originally an LLC, and then it was a sole proprietorship, and Kim Owens was the sole owner. Yet, all of those years, Deep Ellum Radio was always run as if it were a nonprofit community organization. It was run on volunteer DJs, on volunteer time. Deep Ellum Radio has always been a community-run project, and now it's officially a community-run project. It's, instead of being sole proprietorship run as a nonprofit, it is a project of a nonprofit that can give it the attention that it needs to thrive. And it's a symbiotic relationship. We had already made an arrangement with Kim and Deep Ellum Radio to have a space here, a studio space here inside the Deep Ellum Community Center. Mm-hmm. So we were already offsetting the rent, or offsetting isn't even the right word, providing space free of charge. now that it's all in-house, it simplifies fundraising for building out the studio space, and it also opens up the volunteer pool. It's a little bit more glamorous to volunteer for a nonprofit than it is to volunteer for a sole proprietorship. So we're definitely still getting our feet under us, have a lot of working through transition with Deep Ellum Radio.
Right. When I first moved here, I think the first thing I noticed was the Ghost of Blind Lemon, which is back on the air, I believe, now. And I just think in general, it's cool to, have something, because there is such history in Deep Ellum. It's cool to have programs that reflect that. But then also it's cool to have like all these local bands being played somewhere. It's cool.
It really is. I've been listening to the station. I love Chris, the Ghost of Blind Lemon. He's one of those people that's just, I have never met anyone who has a bad thing to say about Chris. He's a sweetheart. He's humble. He's too humble, probably. He's a special ed teacher.
Oh, wow.
So that speaks to the kind of character who he is. And he's always had a heart for local music and for highlighting local music. So he's back on as the interim program director, and the station has been sounding really good. I've been tuning in the afternoons just when it's music in between shows. Not that I don't listen to the shows, but I've also been, tuning in just to listen to the music. And, Dallas music is hot right now. The local music scene is so good.
It's the best kept secret in the whole country, I feel like. I mean, it's like my whole life mission right now is like, why doesn't everybody know about all this amazing music here? But we're working on it. Like, we're putting it out there. We're talking about it. And, so. But, it's frustrating that, and it's funny. It's frustrating, but it's not in the way that Deep Ellum was sort of like this wide open space, and now it's like a little bit more refined. But it's just Dallas is sort of still a little bit of an open space compared to LA, New York, and Chicago. I feel like, as far as it's accessible to get to these places, to see shows. I still think it's a little bit cheaper to live here. I could be wrong, but it seems like it.
It's still a little bit cheaper to live here than LA or New York or Chicago. Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, I don't know. It's like I feel like it's the best big little town, however you want to say it, in the country. That's my view of it.
Yeah.
So
what I say is Dallas is the biggest small town I know.
That's it. Okay, that's what I was looking for. I mean, and it's cool too because Deep Ellum really, to me, is the heart of a lot of the culture in the city, and so
we agree. So the Deep Ellum Community Association mission statement. I'm not going to try to quote the whole thing, blah blah blah, but it ends with Deep Ellum, the soul of Dallas.
Yeah, it's true though, and it's really cool that you're building a place here that people can come, just like instead of just going to Dealey Plaza. Like something in Dallas, like a history of Dallas that's really important to learn about and to, be able to be experienced in some way.
There's so much history right here in Deep Ellum. The building that we've chosen for the community center is really a special building in and of itself. These bricks right here are 131 years old. This building was built in 1892. The structure predates some of the other, really old buildings that people point to around Deep Ellum, like the Knights of Pythias, like Sons of Herman, like, Continental Gin and Adam Hats and Pearlstone. It's older.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah. This building, again, built in 1892, is on record with the city of Dallas as the City Hotel and Mechanics Hall Saloon. It is a 2-story building, so the mezzanine here was added much later. I actually need to look up. I'm not sure what year the mezzanine was added. But when you walk in, that elevator shaft is the original elevator shaft. Most of those window panes up front are original, 131 years old. This is a historically designated building in the historically designated portion of Deep Ellum. This is actually old Deep Ellum, as I explained. The train tracks right here. This is original Deep Ellum. People think of, further west toward Fair Park, before you get to Expo Park being the heart of Deep Ellum. But this is old, true, original Deep Ellum. And on record with the city of Dallas as a City Hotel and Mechanics Hall Saloon, we have no reason to believe that this building ever functioned as a true hotel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Slowly getting that.
I can spell that out for the listeners. This building, we believe that it operated as a brothel would have operated at the time, with the saloon downstairs and the rooms upstairs.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, it's part of history, so here we are.
Definitely this part. So there would have been early blues musicians playing in this space, though, 130 years ago.
Wow. So do we know who by chance, or we're just
No, we don't know. The blues scene didn't really get on the map in a prominent way that people can point to specific figures until that early 20s era, where you've got Blind Lemon and Lead Belly and
So it was already kind of established to people of the day as kind of a spot, I guess. It just wasn't like...
I'm not sure if it was defined as a spot or if it's just a natural...
Just because people were here anyway.
Right, people were here.
Yeah.
And where people are, there you will find music and sex and drugs and dominoes and people being people,
and rock and roll, or what was going to become rock and roll.
Right. Yeah, really, Deep Ellum is... Some people consider Deep Ellum as the birthplace of the blues.
Yeah. I mean, I know there's at least 3 cities I would argue, but I mean, you can't, I'm not saying who's right. I don't know who's right.
I don't know who's right either, but definitely Deep Ellum has got not just the kind of soul that permeates the city of Dallas, but the kind of soul that has international recognition.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I knew about Deep Ellum before I moved here because of the song, which is, I guess all deadheads know that song, but and I've now heard about 500 bands play that song, but I still like it. It's still really cool to hear it when you're in Deep Ellum, So anyway, is there any other history that we should point out before we take off?
Oh my goodness. I mean, there's so much. We could just dive all day. We could talk all day about this, and I would be wrong about some of it too.
And I'm sure people would be more than happy to point it out to me because they love finding mistakes.
Yes. Yeah. I would love for people to point out where I'm wrong. I love the controversy around, who played where and what building is more important and where, what year the Deep Ellum was founded, and the spelling of Deep Ellum is controversial. And I don't know if you know.
I didn't hear about that.
So the Deep Ellum gets its name from Elm Street.
Right.
From being Deep Elm Street. And it was just, pronounced kind of Deep Ellum. And you can find different publications spelling it different ways. So the original spellings were Deep Elm, ELM for Elm Street. Mm-hmm. And then they tried to infuse the phonetics into the spelling, and so we had different spellings: ELAM, ELLUM, ELUM, ELEM.
Oh, okay.
And some guys in the 80s, when they were revitalizing the music scene in Deep Ellum, picked a spelling to unify the neighborhood, and so there's still a little bit of controversy, just in the same way of what year did it really found. And
I guess I haven't heard. I guess they're winning because I haven't heard anyone that's like you. Maybe because
maybe the controversy has kind of faded out by this point, and everyone just accepts that this is the way that it is.
Right.
Just like everyone accepts that Deep Ellum was founded in 1873.
Right. I mean, I guess you gotta at some point just settle on some facts, I guess.
Yep. And that's where we are. Just settle on some facts, and some of these facts are still highly disputed.
Right.
It's not disputed that Deep Ellum was an immigrant town. It is disputed as to whether it was a freedman's town.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, there's definitely part of the narrative that this was the first freedman town in Dallas, or one of the first freedmen town in Dallas, and then there's some pushback that no, this wasn't ever actually a freedman town. It attracted freedmen, but it was not established as a freedman town in that way. But obviously there's parts of the neighborhood that really latch on to the narrative, and I frankly don't know at this point. I had it in my head for a long time that Deep Ellum was established as a freedman's town, and now I've had enough evidence presented to me that I have serious doubts about the origins of the neighborhood.
I assume that it was too. That's interesting. I guess just because of the music myth that maybe we just assume that or something, or I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. Interesting. Man, I guess this just proves the need for people to come down to this center and check out the stuff for themselves.
We do have some real historical artifacts in the space right now that are on display for just a few more weeks because we're about to take down this we have a hodgepodge exhibit of Deep Ellum art and artwork and artifacts and memorabilia. But it's going to come down, and we're going to start actual construction on building out this recording studio and the listening room and this cohesive history exhibit to unify the story. And it won't be a static history exhibit. It will be a series. So the first, we will have a bit of a permanent exhibit to tell that foundational story of Deep Ellum, but we'll have rotating exhibits that change out probably on a 12 to 18 month basis so that it's dynamic and interesting and keeps people coming back.
Yeah, reason to come back. That sounds great. Well, that all sounds exciting. The art fair is something to look forward to. I know there's more stuff coming up, so maybe we'll have you back or someone from the foundation back, and when you open up, we'll maybe come down and do something special. Yes.
The first thing, the Deep Ellum Radio studio is going to launch before the grand opening.
Okay.
So we'll be doing that sometime this summer. And
well, yeah, I might have to take advantage of the studios when it's built. Instead of taking my little 1990s Shure mic everywhere I go with me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll show you the room when we get done here.
Okay, great. Well, hey, thanks again for talking with us today, Breonny, and we look forward to all the great stuff coming out of Deep Ellum Community Center.
All right, thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate you having me on today.
I'd like to thank Breonny Lee for being a guest and having me as a guest at the Deep Ellum Community Center. You can volunteer by following the links in the show notes. Theme song Unstoppable by Salim Nuralla. You can hear the Dallas Famous podcast every week, Sunday 1 p.m. on Deep Ellum Radio, then again on Tuesday at 1 p.m. And then a couple weeks later, we put them on all the podcast platforms. So check it out. Glad you're here. We'll see you next time.